FBG Live. Living for a better today, and not just dreaming about tomorrow.
You gotta love it. Those little technical difficulties that, well, make life just worth living. You know, it's, Sunday, May 24th at 7 o'clock p.m. Texas time. And I'm your host, Steve OBrien. We're going to have our new co-host come on again. I mean, you guys already met him. You know, Dr. Krupa. I'm sorry. I always get people's names wrong. But he won't be coming on for a few minutes now. We'll bring him in about 15 minutes or so when I see he's on the line. We spent a little bit of time trying to get him familiar with the board and how to actually work the board, and I see that he's coming in on a phone this time. He couldn't figure out the way into Skype. We'll work out those details really quickly, or maybe we'll work them out over time. But this is important, so we'll put in our time. Lots of people put in a lot of time for very important things, and a lot of people don't put in any time on important things and choose to do other stuff that, well, it's not important. Tell you what's important: Texas, the Republic of Texas, independence, freedom, liberty. All those things are very, very important. And Texas itself, the Republic of Texas, was an important thing. You know, it was created out of the Republic of Mexico after, well, a totalitarian takeover, you know, bam, bam. Okay, you got Texas. Then, okay, it was, you know, stopped and folded into the United States. And today we have a totalitarian government once again, except it lives in a democracy, wonderful little democracy, but everything's secret, right? The whole idea that they don't have a republic anymore, that's kind of a secret to everybody. The mass media tells them that, well, you know, it's the Republic of the United States. Well, they don't say that. They say the United States of America. It's a corporate type thing. And I think you really need to understand that. But you don't have to understand it for very much longer. Today in the corporate United States, they're working on the Trans-Pacific Partnership. What is that? Oh, okay, maybe I'll tell you a little bit before we get into talking about Texas. The Trans-Pacific Partnership, and this does affect Texas directly because we were spun to life out of what was the Republic of Mexico. Boom, the Republic of Texas. Boom, part of the United States, you know. Okay, great. We were something. Then now we're nothing, allegedly, at least in the occupiers' eyes. The Republic of Texas, you know, Texas, the TexasRepublic.com, that group kind of came back together in 2007 and said, well, Congress didn't convene, we can reconvene. And they went ahead and started populating the government again and figured out a focus going forward. And we're going to bring some changes to Texas. We're going to restore the republic. It's very important, and there's a lot of people putting in a lot of time to do that. And I'll tell you all about them. I mean, I'll even introduce you to a lot of them. But I'll make it clear that they're out there and people care about Texas. But I was talking about the Trans-Pacific Partnership. That was when, you know, Brock, whatever his name is, you know, he's got so many names, Social Security numbers, but a CEO doesn't need all that information. He just has to be in charge. He got together with the Canadian Prime Minister and whatever, I guess they call him a president of Mexico, and they inked a deal a few years ago, and now they need to make it happen faster. What do they need to make happen? Well, anything they want to do. They need to merge North America and South America, or at least, you know, Mexico and Canada into the corporate United States, and then they can have laws that are contiguous across Mexico and the United States and Canada, and we'll just call it something else. And they're going to do it. At least they're going to try. They're trying right now. And see, the way they do it and the way totalitarian governments do things is they'll sit there and go behind closed doors and do your little talking heads or the selected elected, those people that they select for you to elect. And remember to go out and vote in the corporate United States, because that's showing that you pick one of the selected individuals to be elected to neglect you. Crazy world, huh? Yeah, I think it's crazy. But they go behind closed doors currently, and they're reading through the probably thousands of pages, and who knows, they probably just have a ping pong table set up in there, and they're going back and forth, and they're not reading anything, because all this is about is a power grab. The corporate United States wants to do what it wants to do, and it's going to do what it's going to do. And, they're always talking about controllers and sub-controllers and things like that. Okay, didn't want to go there too far, but I do like the idea of transparent government, and we've got some kind of discussion that we need to have tonight about transparent government, and the transparent has been a little bit on my mind. But, there's been a lot of things on my mind, right? Because I talked to a lot of people, and I had a follow-up conversation that I wanted to share with you all. Walking through life, I meet all sorts of different peoples, and I, bumped into one individual at a time, and somebody mentioned something about September 11th, 2001, and how, that just didn't look right. And another individual goes ahead and says, "Oh, are you one of those conspiracy theory guys?" to this guy, right? And I look at him and I say, "You don't really believe that September 11th, 2001 went down the way that you were told, right?" And he looks at me, he says, "What?" And I'm like, "Yeah, man." And I don't really care, man. If you want to live in the world of mass media and wear blinders, go ahead. I totally... not screw you, but I can't convince you. So I told him, yeah, okay, 2 planes, 3 buildings. Interesting. Pentagon, little hole, 1 plane, no plane wreckage. I don't waste too much of my time. And then he goes, but the government wouldn't lie. And I'm like, yeah, dude, you just believe what you want to believe. I don't have energy for you. Well, okay, and I talked a little bit of Republic of Texas with the guy, and he understands and he feels and he knows that, well, I have a different view on the world. So I bump into him, nothing. Friday he comes over and he says, "You know what, man?" He says, a friend of mine gave me a video, and this video was of 9/11. He says, "If these things are true, I don't know what to believe." I said, "Well, don't believe it then. Don't believe it." He says, "What?" I said, "Don't believe the facts, right?" He said, "Can I do that?" I said, "Sure. It's called cognitive dissonance. And, well, got to give you a warning about when you take in facts and you ingest information that's true, that something's wrong. If you go ahead and perform this procedure called cognitive dissonance and you just try to stuff it down and forget you know what you know, there's outward manifestations, and who knows, you could get angry, you could get violent, you could do this and whatever, get scared. I don't know. It was very interesting listening to somebody sit there and go through the point. And that's what I like to call a secondary reaction. The initial conversation, somebody breached the topic, and then I went ahead and followed up. And obviously there was a guy in the sidelines trying to inform this individual of the world around him. And I'm trying to do the same thing. A lot of us are trying to do the same thing. We're going to show you an alternate view. Tonight's all focused on the Republic of Texas. How did that story fit in? Well, we're talking about the totalitarian regimes. I mean, is totalitarian wrong? I don't know. Hey, you know what? We jumped over to We Resistors radio time for the moment. So basically to get your voice, right, to hear what you have to say. We'll be here until we're not. But for now, you can sit there and call in at 347-857-4397. You got any questions during the whole evening? Republic of Texas related, of course. Perhaps you disagree. I'd totally love to hear from you. 347-857-4397. What kind of time am I looking at here? Okay, wow, I bloviated for like, well, that's a long time. I got a couple more minutes before I go ahead and wrap Doc in. And I really wanted to let you guys know how big and how important the Republic of Texas is. It's something that, well, in a totalitarian world, and I'm going to go with that, freedom and liberty become a coveted, a sought-after commodity. The people that have been working for so many years to restore the Republic, are they important? Yeah, sure they are. Can you eliminate them? Yeah, sure. But they'll come back. They'll come back stronger. Each individual of the group is important, right? The idea, freedom, liberty, the Republic, it lives in Texas. You know, there's that thing, Jade Helm, that's coming up, right? And I get Jade Helmed by all sorts of fronts. I was actually Jade Helmed by my mom. You know, she's coming to visit next week, guys, so haven't seen her since the Republic of Texas rally in 2014. Be really nice to hear from her, and I'll try to bring her on the radio to talk about, well, I want to hear what she has to say about the Republic of Texas. You know, she lives in Arizona, and her world is not my world, and she might think I'm a little bit crazy until we start talking, and then she kind of agrees with everything. But she Jade Helmed me, and, you know, in this Jade Helm thing, yeah, so they're playing with a computer program, and the event that they're doing is Helm allegedly stands for Homeland Eradication of local militants. Yeah, that's people that talk against the current regime in, you know, the corporate United States, and they pose a threat to this mass media control. So a lot of people are getting scared. You know, my mom doesn't necessarily go there, but she talks the talk. Oh, man. So I guess it's time. Now, I'm going to go ahead and take this one point on. I want to go Waco again for you real quick, because Waco and the Republic of Texas, they're there again. They're mixed together. So what do we know about what happened in Waco a couple weeks ago? A couple biker groups got together for a pre-planned meeting. A bunch of cops came over to Waco to meet them, and, whatever their agenda was, it didn't seem to be keeping the peace. They stood back in the parking lot and assembled in a little posse, and at some point they started shooting. The arguments are there, and we have yet to see footage saying who started the shooting. The bikers are saying the cops did. You know, the cops, they're saying bad bikers. But nobody's showing you the footage. And the reason I say the Republic of Texas is kind of being roped into, there's another group. They're called the Republic of Texas Biker Association or something like that, and they usually like to get together on their motorcycles and then drive to all sorts of different parts of Texas. And now they're supposed to be doing this thing in Austin coming up, and the Austin police are going to be watching them closely. Well, last year they loved them to death. This year they're afraid of them. They vilified them. I don't know. A lot of them are doctors and lawyers and some, you know, these kind of professionals, and they just like to ride around on their Harley and do whatever, and that's great. But the Republic of Texas rally, well, that's kind of about Texas, right? It's kind of about the Republic of Texas. I'm kind of deviating, and it's time to bring on Doc. I'm going to go ahead and unmute his microphone and see if he has anything to say. Good evening, Doc. Are you there?
I'm here.
Hey, did you have a problem getting in on Skype?
Well, I ended up having to call in on my phone, and I tried to call in as a host, but it says only one host is allowed on Blog Talk, so that's probably why it wouldn't work.
They are evil. Blog Talk is just a big clunker. But hey, it's there and we've got it, so whatever. Hey, what's new with the Republic of Texas and you? What's important? What should we be talking about tonight?
Well, I think trying to go forward and all the work on the memorial and getting to that international court is the big thing on everybody's mind right now.
Okay. Yeah, last week we had John Jarnicki, President of the Republic of Texas, on, and he outlined, so you can actually go back and hear that archive. If you go to thetexasrepublic.com and click on Texas Republic or the Republic of Texas Radio, you'll see the archive there. It's for May 21st. Now, we talked for a little bit, and he comes in about an hour into the show. We had a lot of technical difficulties. That happens from time to time. But he outlined the ducks that we needed to, well, get into the national court. Do you remember what those were, Doc?
Well, the big thing was the memorial, and then finance, because it's very expensive to get your people over there to the international court. And that was the two big things that John mentioned, that we need the funds, and we're working on where people can send money to the Republic through the website, and then working on this memorial, which is a real big thing right now.
Yeah, and that's where, you know, as I analyze this whole thing, and maybe I'm ignorant and I don't understand all this, but I was a project manager for a while. And a project manager tries to figure out what needs to happen before other things can happen. And I see us spending a whole bunch of time making a memorial before we actually know what this memorial needs to be like and where we're going to give this memorial, because we don't have a path to go. There's no path outlined. There's no communication with a path as far as I know. They haven't shared that with me. They haven't shared that with anybody. They just keep telling us that's a secret. So all this energy, this memorial, right, what do you do with it? Let me throw a possibility out there. Everybody's just wasting their time on this memorial because they're going to spend 40, 60 hours personally on the memorial, and they're going to have to do a last-minute rewrite on the bus on the way to, you know, the ICC, whatever venue they choose. You know, that's my biggest concern at this point. You have any thoughts, Doc?
Well, I was just thinking as you were going through that the way it's explained to me and listening to our Supreme Court Chief Justice today, without the memorial, you never can get that recognition and nothing can go forward. So this is kind of you taking it to the International Court of Human Rights violations and showing where treaties were broken and what's going on with the nation of the Republic of Texas. And that's how you get your recognition, and they have to write it to go forward. So the way it sounds to me, without this, you couldn't even go to the court.
Okay, but then that also comes from Chief Justice Cannon, and he's never actually gotten into international court.
Not to my knowledge. He's researched it and studied a lot of court cases that have gone there, and people like Hawaii and the Native Americans that have done some of that. But to my knowledge, he has never taken a case there or been there.
Okay. So the project manager in me would say, first we need to focus in on the target, right? And you know a little bit more about what the target allegedly is than I do. So we'd have to say we pick the target. Then it would be find somebody that knows something about the, let's say, target. And when I say target, I really mean, you know, which court that you're actually going to. Am I correct that it's a specific court? How is that actually? What's the verbiage for that, Doc?
Well, they said the ICC, and then they've mentioned many times the Human Rights Violation Division, and the big issue is to prove that we're a sovereign people and we want to settle this peaceful, and we just want, since the treaties were broke with the United States, that we just want this acknowledgement. And so you've got to get it before them, and I guess the Human Rights Commission is the big part.
Okay. So wouldn't a different path, a non-memorial writing path, and it might contain writing a memorial, find somebody that's actually gone through there that you can talk to about the whole process and figure out that process and the paperwork and what they expect for a memorial? I've talked to a couple people about what a memorial is, and the first time I heard about it, it came out of Ray's mouth, and it seems like there's different definitions. Ray's definition, from what I'm told, is supposed to be a big, all-inclusive, huge document, and some it's supposed to be a one-page, two-page thing, something quick for the judge to actually read.
Yeah, I've seen research that showed, and it actually, one of the statements was, keep it concise and easy to read and understand so the judge will read it. And then I've heard on some of the calls where they've talked about it, where it mentioned it could be thousands of pages. So I guess there's a big difference of what you can do and what you need to do.
Okay, so you're hearing the same thing that I am. Now, so we're writing a memorial, and we may or may not have a target. We don't have any experience with actually getting airtime from the particular court. Wouldn't a better path forward be after we select the court, then find somebody that's been there and have them tell us a little bit about the process so we can reformat it? Because at this moment, no, go ahead, answer that if you would. What would you think about that?
Well, I think having some international law firm that deals in this kind of stuff, working with Ray Cannon, our Chief Justice, would be a fabulous thing, because then you've got the best of both worlds. Ray studied it, he knows the Republic, and then we'd have somebody working with him that knows the international justice system.
Okay, and I'm just trying to make sure, and I'm really concerned about wasting time and not moving forward. And I'm a little bit concerned about privacy. I'm a little bit concerned about, fiefdoms, I guess. And I have lots of concerns this week, and some of it revolves around Tom O'Halloran. O'Halloran? Yeah, I'm not sure. So Tom, for all of our listeners, if you don't know yet, Tom came to the Republic of Texas just recently. He's a radio broadcaster, but calling him by one thing, that's just, wow, that's not right. But Tom's been doing all sorts of stuff. He's been setting up the VFW location. He threw money out of his own pocket to get the VFW in Tomball available to the Republic of Texas for the Joint House. You know, he spent all day yesterday and today dealing with the international issue where they're sitting there, you know, working on memorandums. And last week, I don't remember what day it was, he was kicked off the international committee, and they told him that, well, nobody can share with Tom O'Halloran a course correction because it was top secret. Did I get that right?
Well, pretty close. What's going on? This particular call the other night, they wanted to affirm that the information that was put out stayed on this call. Well, if you missed the call, and that was quite a few people, then actually you weren't allowed to tell them about it. And in Tom O'Halloran's case, he had been very involved. We lost a husband of one of our representatives, Sean Dorn, and Tom was involved and missed a few calls helping with preparation for the funeral and the viewing and all that stuff. And so he was told that he couldn't be on the calls because he'd missed a few, and then,
Right, and he's not privy to that information because, well, it was top secret. Well, next step, after that happened, he's kicked off the call for missing the call. You can't tell him what was on the call because he wasn't on the call. And, well, Ray Cannon has kicked people off the call consistently for not being there on time, not showing up every time, not reading all the pages that he's sending out, a variety of different things. Is that true?
Well, he suggested on one of the calls that people were more than 5 minutes late to lock the call down because he wanted to get started, and they decided that later on, I think they waived that. And he has made the decision the other night to affirm that information stayed on the call. And the problem you run into is, first off, all this stuff is on Zoom on the internet, and it's recorded, so it's not real private. And we're pretty sure that the same friendly people that visited us on Valentine's Day for the raid listening to phones and computer stuff and checking everything anyway. So I didn't see that as a real threat. I felt like it was more what the United States and the state of Texas are doing that I don't like. So I had voiced my concern, and I don't really think the answer that was given quite satisfied that for me. And one of the things, I think there's a lot of very good people, well-meaning people who are looking at a security side of this. But what I had said was, every one of us on those calls, we represent everybody that is a Texian. And so if we're doing something in secret that could affect them and they don't even know about it, then I felt like that was wrong. So I voiced my opinion, and I've heard from a few others that agreed. But so I don't know. I heard there was a conference call of the president and executive and some stuff today, so maybe they've ironed some of that out. I don't know.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see where it actually stands. I know I thought it was quite funny, some of the responses to Tom's objections to being kicked off the committee and kept in the dark. One of them was, well, it's God's plan and you must be working with Satan. Right? That's crazy. But I hear that a lot. Some people like saying, well, just ignore it. And that's part of the reason that the United States is screwed up, because, a biblical understanding can be that, well, Jesus, God, is in control, and we're supposed to obey our superiors, and they're all great. I don't go with that myself. I say that everything should be called into account, and we should find out what's the correct model. This thing that's going on with the International Committee, I don't like secret things, okay? I'll agree with Tom on that. I don't like secret things that are only secret from a group. But again, the corporate U.S. has the great NSA spying thing, and yeah, they do care what the Republic of Texas is doing, so maybe they're listening. They probably are. They're at least recording it, and they'll take a look at it later. Therefore, calling for security and then talking on an open phone line, that's really funny. That's just hilarious. But I want to use that for a bigger thing. Now, I do know that they've, changed their stance on Tom O'Halloran participating in the international meetings. Is that correct?
They changed what?
Their stance. He can actually go in, because they had a big thing in Tomball the last 2 days. You were there, right?
No, I didn't go there. I've done a couple of Zoom calls. He did mention to me that they told him he could sit in, but he said because he wasn't allowed to get in, he was locked out for a few visits on the Zoom call, that he didn't see any purpose in going in, not knowing what was going on.
Yeah, I don't see a purpose for going to it either at this point. And I really would like to see the joint session actually address what the hell they're doing there. Because, honestly, if you go to therepublicoftexas.com and you can click on meeting minutes, there you can get the audio of the last meeting. And you're going to get some information from Bob Miller at about 5 minutes in, and I was going to cut up the clip, and I cut it wrong, and I missed the point, and so I didn't upload it, and I'm sorry. But you can go to the Republic of Texas, and Bob Miller explains to the whole joint session that it's just a informational thing, a voluntary thing, that it really is all about learning about the international angle. Maybe he was wrong in how he identified it, but it didn't seem to have anything to do with getting Texas free. Just, it seems like a class that you can take. At least that's the way he represented it. It was a class for the executive, for, the Senate, and for the House. Is that all it is? Am I wrong? Am I doing something wrong? Thinking wrong?
There's a lot of teaching from Ray to everybody that's on these calls, so I guess you could consider it like taking a class in a way, because as they're writing, he's teaching them and giving them court cases and all kinds of stuff like that. And then they've met for over 3 years, talking and learning and studying and trying to learn everything they could about international law.
From what I understand, it's been 2.5, 3 years, and it was originally, the International Committee was set up by Billy Ford under President Richard Perkins. So that's where they commissioned that group. And somehow, over time, Billy Ford is no longer running the group. Now Ray Cannon is running the group. But I think, I hope you'd support me, and I hope everybody supports me, that this needs to be a key issue. First, security. Second, what's our path? If they're writing a memorial for some place we have no idea about where we're going or what they want in their memorial, and I don't care what Ray says that he knows, right, until you know what you know from somebody else, not a book, right? You got to know where you're going. So we're going to sit there, and how many people were over in Tomball, and how many people are spending their evenings writing memorials that, well, it may need to be rewritten totally and completely when we can spend time trying to figure out the international angle. I really think that, and I know about secrecy and privacy, right? The Constitution does allow for things to be done in non-public for matters of state secrets, but it doesn't mean that it can't be public forever. That just means, let's say the current talking point is something about, how do I say it? We don't want anybody to know what particular court we're going to so they can't sabotage us and, do something like that. We don't want them to know the angle. Yet on the security front, we want to go ahead and use these public tools like Zoom or Zoot, phone calls, all that information has already been leaked out, by us, and we're limiting that. But I think that we need to, I know Ray says, and I know Ray is a smart guy, and I know he's read a lot of books, and I know he thinks that you need a memorial. I know he thinks press release should be 40,000 pages of, facts that nobody cares about. And I do know that press release point is wrong. I am the media. I've dealt with the media. Okay, so I just have questions. We need to address those. I see that we have Susie Camamack. She's on the line. We'll bring her on unless you want to You have anything to say to that, Doc? I'm sorry, I just, went on a tear.
Well, I think you did well. Let's bring Susie on and see what she thinks about all this. She's one of those people that she couldn't make some of those calls, so she wouldn't have been privy to the information.
Okay. Well, this will be fun. It's going to get a little sideways on Susie because I told her we were going to do one thing, and it turns out that it's going to be another type thing. Hey, I just unmuted the mic. Hey, Susie, are you there?
Good evening, gentlemen. How are you?
We're doing wonderful.
Well, actually, it's not going sideways any more than it would have already since you and I really did not nail down the subject matter that we were going to discuss this evening. So I'd say this is an open mic night.
Oh, that's just beautiful. So, okay. So I've gone all over the place in the first half hour, but I think I want to keep this to the specific topic of international issues. Last week, President Jarnicki was on, and he outlined, the path that the Republic of Texas is heading as far as, what is required. Hey, you got a lot of background noise there, Susie.
Okay.
Are you typing?
Am I typing? No. I'm actually trying to get a better signal.
Okay. You can do that by tapping sticks on the side of your cell phone. Just kidding. Okay, so John Jarnicki outlined what he called the ducks, right? What's going to be required to get us to international court, whichever court. And one would be pinning down exactly where we're going. 2 would be having funding for those, and 3 it would be, a memorial. And I think the 4th duck was find some kind of legal support team to help us through that process. Well, currently we have what's known in the Republic of Texas as the International Committee. Now, the International Committee had a little hoo-ha-ha this weekend, and I don't know, did you see that at all, that thing with Tom O'Halloran?
Yes, I did receive a copy of his resignation letter, and I wasn't privy to the vow of silence because I was not hanging from a tree heading west with my left arm up listening to my cell phone out where I live in the sticks. But I fully agree with Tom's knee-jerk reaction. This is exactly what we're trying to avoid in the current course of events, and the governments that we're dealing with, the ones that we're trying to shed more light on. So I was actually kind of shocked when I heard from Dr. Krupa some of the other events that led up to Tom's vehement letter, and I fully agree with Tom. There should be the best way to rid any place of cockroaches is to shine light in it. Now, I'm not saying we're full of cockroaches, but government is full of cockroaches. So I think the more light, the better. It's very cleansing, no matter who we're dealing with.
Oh, totally. Hey, Susie, you have some longevity here. You were involved with were you involved with the International Committee when it was first set up?
I was after a time.
Okay.
We were meeting in a particular town every month, and there was a lot of teaching and learning going on.
Okay, it was more of a teaching-learning thing. Because from what I understand, and I might be totally ignorant on the facts, but I heard that was initially something that Billy Ford had set up. He was operating under the power that was vested in him from Richard Perkins, because Billy Ford is an appointed individual, and so it was under Billy Ford. Is that correct, or am I getting something wrong here?
No, you're on track there. You're on track, Steve.
Okay. So, because at this time we've got a lot of rules, and I understand nobody knows what it's like to live in a republic, and we don't have big books on rules and procedures on how to have these kind of meetings. And making decisions on what's public and what's private. Ray is holding a teaching/learning thing called the International Group, and may or may not have it may or may not be working to find or to get into the venue. And part of this first half hour that I've been dealing with is I was telling Doc, look, man, I've been a project manager before. So a project manager has to say what comes first. And the first thing we need to do, in my eyes, is not write a damn memorial, right? And we may or may not need said item, right? But we don't know even the format of a memorial. I've talked to 2 people now, and they've said, yes, a memorial could be big, and, well, it can be page. So we're spending a lot of energy educating a whole bunch of elected officials and heading down that route, when I have a little project manager background, I'd say, well, I would say if I knew what court we were going to, maybe somebody that's gone down that path before and ask them what it took, and then try to work that direction. And I kind of worry about that, Susie. You know, I worry that all these people are, they're spending a lot of their energy and their time. And I know they all have great hearts, right? Like Ray, he spends a lot of time on it. But what would happen if they spend thousands of hours on this thing and then they pick their court and they have to rewrite it, on the plane over there?
Well, the parameters of these memorials, I know that there are countries that have long ones, there are countries that have shorter ones, and I must beg to differ on one point that you mentioned, was that, the elected officials are all on this call. When the first call went out, as it were, to everyone who wanted to be in on this, it was not relegated to elected officials only. This was open to a lot of the people. And there were a lot of people in on those first few calls. So that's just point number one. On the second point, I think that it might be better, at least from my as a writer. You start off with a first draft, but when you're dealing with a lot of people, I think it would be better to have more than one or a longer one to cull from, so if a shorter one is needed, then you would definitely have enough material to pull that together rather quickly, rather than being told, oh, it's really short, and you're sitting there holding the bag going, okay. So if you're talking about flying over there on the plane, 7-8 hours, you'd be able to probably parse a few paragraphs and pare it down rather than have to expand on that.
Right. I know I'm playing extreme devil's advocate here, and I want to question everything. And you make a great point for, making a huge, memorial. But yeah, okay. Yeah, I got that understanding about, I was listening to that meeting over in Tomball that happened at the beginning of this month, and Bob Miller kind of laid it out that it was only for elected and appointed officials, and so I guess that's where I started, mimicking the wrong thing. But that's neither here nor
Bob
there.
Wilson?
Oh, I'm sorry. I always call him Bob Miller. I'm sorry, Bob Wilson, Senator.
That's okay.
Wilson.
I was just clarifying.
That's terrible. Okay, Susie, you're representative of Congress in the 9th District?
9th District, Bexar County.
Okay. As a Texian, I would like to ask you to look into what the International Committee is doing, and I'd like you to talk to the other people within Congress and anybody, just to say, well, this has been going for 2.5 years. Now, if it needs to be done in private, or then it needs to be done in private, but it needs to be done, because I'm not too sure. I don't have full confidence at this part, and it just might be angst, but we're keeping the avenue secret, right? And
right.
allegedly we have this thing called NSA spying, and they're probably listening to us. I always assume that. And so they are. So what's the point in keeping everything away from us to make sure that that Billy Ford's group is actually going the right direction?
Right. And I fully agree. I mean, I always assume I'm being overheard, whether I'm at a table or out in the middle of nowhere. That's just something that that creeps into our lives, and we just have to take that on because it's a necessary measure. And I fully agree that the parameters have to be sort of ironed out as far as what is necessary and what is absolute. So I'm sure that this will be discussed at length at the next meeting. I'm in Tomball. I'm positive of that. So I will do my best to get your questions and anybody else's questions answered to the best of my ability. And I do plan on speaking to Billy on a personal level, well, not personal, but privately at the next meeting as well.
Yeah, that'll be interesting. Hey, so I found out that it was Billy Ford's. What just happened? Yeah, somebody just muted me off. That was kind of cute. Wonder what happened there.
Hi, McLean, Virginia.
Yeah,
anyway.
They're just showing us what they can do. Fancy mouse movers.
They're showing their love.
I know, they love me a lot. But what I was trying to say is, so reporting is interesting. When you look at the Republic of Texas, you have the House. People in the House, they serve for one term. That's very important. In the Senate, you serve for 3 years, and a third of everybody comes up for election every year, right?
Yes.
And then you have the executive. How does that work? I forget.
The executive works on whether your appointed positions, and they serve at the pleasure of the president for the term that the president is in office.
What does that actually mean? Serves at the pleasure of.
That means that if you're appointed, that if the president appoints you to certain positions, then that is what you're going to do for his term in office.
Okay. Well, yeah, because that realization came the other day or earlier today that, if Billy Ford was previously appointed by Richard Perkins and has now been reappointed by, President Jarnicki, then Billy Ford actually reports to John Jarnicki, and Ray Cannon, who kicked John Jarnicki off the call for not being there, doesn't run the call. It's Billy Ford. And so it's kind of like crazy. I don't know. But we don't necessarily know all of our procedures and stuff like that. We've fallen into those traps because John likes to quote Bob Wilson. I got it right that time. That's great. When he says, it's brilliant, right? He says, we don't know what it's like to live in a republic. He says it differently. But it's true. We don't know policies and procedures. Ray was running this call, and he doesn't want to stop the call, and he wants to teach during the call, and he doesn't want people, he's a teacher. You lock them out of the class if they don't show up. You kick them out of the class, right? But the truth is, we're doing business here, and not everybody has all their time devoted. Hey, Doc, I'm going to pop into the green room for a minute if you want to hold down the stuff. We got a caller on the other line. I want to see what's going on.
Okay, I can see that, but I can't hear anything on my screen, so I'm using the phone.
Okay, I'm going to go take care of it. Why don't you guys hang in there and tell me what's important.
Okay.
Good evening, Doc.
Good evening, Susie. One of the questions I want to ask you is, being that you have been very involved in press releases and communicating in several languages when we needed a translator, and the fact that you couldn't make some of the calls and we were told to keep that information secret. What were your feelings when you got Tom's email and the fact that you were also included in that?
I was pretty floored. I was shocked. It doesn't make it really didn't make sense to me to have those kind of parameters unless, it just didn't make sense. It didn't make good regular people sense to me. It sounded very very isolationist, and it stuck in my craw. I couldn't swallow that very well. And I know how Ray likes to inform people, and he is extremely learned, and he has done a lot of reading, and he has spent a lot of his downtime, of which he has very little. He didn't spend it with his family. He spent it trying to better the prospects of laying the proper foundation and groundwork for going back to the freedoms that we should be enjoying today but aren't. And I can understand how a proud papa is going to guard his baby as he sees fit, but I think that was going a little bit too far. I'm not sure. I could be wrong. I've been wrong before.
Yeah,
but that's the way I see it.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
Yeah, you broke up a little bit there, Doc. What did you have to say?
Well, I was just going to say, you and I were talking earlier, and see if Susie agrees. It seems like security was a big issue, but I think, meaning well, it got overlooked, the fact that if we're in these meetings or these calls, we represent everybody that's ever signed the paperwork to be a Texian. And so if there is any security issue, they're sharing the same risks and same issues, but they don't even know what we're doing. And for that reason, I didn't think that the secrecy was a good idea.
Yeah, I know. The funny thing is when we start arguing the security thing, it's laughable, and everybody else knows it's laughable, right? We don't have the ability to provide security to the, intelligence apparatuses that exist around us. So what is it? It really seems like it's a teaching thing. He wants to keep it. I'm more focused on, is that the correct direction to go? And, as far as Ray's knowledge and how much information he has, I know that's great, but I don't know that that's going the right direction because we're keeping it secret. And I like shining light on everything, and that's why I'm talking here. Another point I'd have to bring up with you, Susie, and it would be towards, trying to help something and hurting it. And
right.
That happens an awful lot. And when I saw that email that Tom O'Halloran put out, I went, well, there we go again, right? All these people come in and they say, well, I do support freedom and liberty, but I'm not going to put up with this, right? That's not going to work on so many levels. I've watched visitors and, representatives themselves be put to sleep by different speakers during the meeting as they go off on a tangent, on a tear. And we all know who those folks are. And we've all had different people say, oh, my God, that guy can talk. So those guys are well-meaning individuals. We have a few of them. I'm not going to bring the names out at this time. But that is kind of one of those. And see, Ray wants to share what he knows with a bunch of special people. My God, the Republic of Texas is a lot of people that care an awful lot, and they pay attention. But the international angle is so important that it has to be going forward, that a teaching seminar type thing trying to educate everybody. Now, you make a great argument, Susie, that, okay, great, you have to rewrite the whole memorial on the plane, on the bus going over there, and it's better to have like 50 pages and skinny it down. That's totally legitimate, in saying that but everybody has to know that the next 40 hours of their life, or 60 hours, or 160 hours might be deleted with a single keystroke, right? And that their document that they've made wasn't for naught, but it won't necessarily be used. So it's just where I'm kind of coming from, and I'm sure that we do need to address some of those points. We need to address more control as far as how to manage the calls. I do applaud Ray for trying to control the call, even though he might have gone too far. But sometimes we run the meetings and we let somebody go on. There's a question. Somebody poses a question. It's a yes-no answer. And we go into 35, 40 minutes of stories, and then we forget what happened.
That's true.
So we've got a little bit of, cleanup to be doing. And a lot of these questions that come up, they don't need to be discussed in forum at the joint house. But we didn't have a real venue for discussing these. And that's what I'm trying to create here, is a venue for, well, if it doesn't belong in a joint session and you have an issue, well, come on, man, we'll talk about it. We'll figure out what's going on. So yeah, and I'd like to also add that Tom O'Halloran really created this radio program, because I've done a radio program like this before. It was called Free Texas. It was here on Blog Talk Radio, and it went on for a while, and yada yada. But then Tom said, "Hey, we should start the radio program." Blah blah blah. And well, I misunderstood him, and I thought he wanted to be on the radio with me, and then all of a sudden it was me. But now I got Doc, and Doc will be joining me as the co-host. We've got him looking at the switchboard and doing things, and we're working on stuff. But I would like to give credit to all these people out there, and I don't know what all you guys have done. I'm sure it's like mountains of stuff to, Free Texas? I think that's kind of important. But Tom has done a lot. I didn't like the idea of, losing Tom. But he made a great point.
I still don't like the idea of losing Tom. I mean, that's because he's a big spark. He's a very big spark, and he's a very needed cog in the wheel.
Mm-hmm. But it might have gone too far.
Well, that's true. That's exactly right.
But we can always manage it in the future, as long as we can deal with lessons learned. Now, I don't take Tom as a person that gives up very easily, so I don't think we've heard the last of him for sure. So we'll just have to see how the cards lie. But we need to address some of the important parts. And I know
Correct.
You're going to do that, Susie.
Yes, I am, Steve. You can bet on it.
Now, okay, back into why I actually wanted to talk to you about, Susie, so I get off my soapbox type thing. Susie, why the Republic of Texas? Why did you get involved? What made you be involved in this kind of stuff, freedom and liberty?
Because that's what I believe in. Because that's what that's what our history is. This is what people have fought and died for. I was born in Texas, but I grew up in a country that was thinly veiled. It was, communism. It was socialism. It was another puppet government. And I remember being warned as a very, very young child not to mention the president's name on the playground. And I remember at that time thinking, why would I be mentioning the president's name on the playground? Several years later, I came to understand exactly why you didn't do that, because things that are presumed or assumed outside of context can be deadly. And so when we returned to the United States to live, I realized, and I told my father this, I said, what makes you think that we're so different from the country we just moved out of? Because it's not. And he said, no, it is. This is still the freest country in the world, which, from his point of view, having been a member of the Greatest Generation, having fought in WW2, and been one of those that never talked about it, I remember a couple of years before he died, he told somebody, I was just doing my job. And I understand that as well. He did his job to keep what he thought were the people that needed to remain free. And I remember him telling me one time when I happened to see the tattoo on my uncle's arm at Christmas. And I asked him, I was very young, I said, what is that? And he said, well, that's something, it's deep into the skin, it'll never be removed. And later on, outside of earshot of my uncle, I remember him telling me, he says, I fought and watched my friends die to keep anybody from ever having to be tattooed again against their will or brought under submission and forced to watch other people of their own kind die. That pretty much stuck with me. So having been exposed to those kind of politics at a very early age and having had my perceptions of things formed over the years through college, etc. I had worked on different political campaigns, both sides of the aisle, no sides of the aisle, and seeing what happened beyond that green curtain, how people will glad hand each other and slap each other on the back, and it doesn't matter what stripe they are, they're all cut from the same cloth. That scared me. That's why I got out of politics. That's in that realm. I saw what happens. It smells bad. It stinks to high heaven. And so going back to something that is pure, that people can understand, that people can hopefully begin to have some common sense about and understand that every single one of us has the responsibility to each other and to themselves to provide the best possible future for their children in an environment where they can flourish and not be under the thumb or the heel of some government, which can be occupying, it can be oppressive, it can be cruel. And I see the dumbing down of just about everybody in every country at an ever more rapid rate in the hopes of the powers that be grasping that little brass ring. They feel that it's within their reach, so much so now that they don't really care who knows what about what they're doing, what they did, what they're planning on doing, because they really don't, they're arrogant enough to really not care anymore. They're like, well, what can the little people do? What can they really do? What can they accomplish at this point? Let them eat cake. We don't care, because soon, it'll be our little world and we can mold it however we want to. That's what I take exception to.
Yeah, I like when you say that your dad told you we live in the freest country in the world, but then you have to sit there and I know you've studied things, and during that time it was encroaching. It was coming in the side doors and the back doors, and the freedoms were heading out left, right, and center. And wow, that's kind of crazy. I know.
Yeah. It makes me really sad. It really does.
Yeah. Oh, I was shocked.
So that's what I'm fighting for.
Man, I was totally in shock when I found out that, we don't live in a republic, right? You can't even call it a democratically elected republic, right? It's really a democracy, right? And it's a hybrid animal with the selection and the election and whatever. And everybody all plays on the same damn side, except they argue point A and point B. And it gets worse and worse. And honestly, who's killing the most people every year around the world?
Right. It's the military arm of the world.
And, well, we love the military, and I just mean as a nation, as individuals. I love every single one of them, and I love that they have a heart for something that's not real, right? Because when they say, I'm going to fight from America, you go, do you know what the United States of America is? Can you see it? And I don't know that they actually see it. Well, I know I'm fighting for the Republic of Texas, and I know how I got there. Susie, how did you bump into the Republic of Texas, and when?
Oh, that's a strange and wonderful story. Back in 2010, I was headed out Highway 183 or 187, and towards Vanderpool, and all of a sudden on this lonely highway, there appeared a dog. And this dog was in the middle of the highway. And this dog was perpendicular. And this dog wouldn't move. I slowed down in my truck, and I looked at the dog, and the dog stood there looking sideways at me. And he was damn straight in the middle on the yellow lines. And I thought, all right, I have collected enough strays in my life, and I saw he had a collar, and the collar had a tag, and I thought, hallelujah, I can call the owners because there's nothing else out here. There's no cars, there's no gates, there's nobody. So I got out of the car, went over to the dog looked at me, and then all of a sudden he made a beeline for the open door, jumped in, sat on the console, and stared straight out the front window like, onward, through the fog, let's go. Wow. So I got back in the truck, and I looked at this dog, and I saw his name was Max. And I said, so Max, who do you belong to? And I had no signal. But the last name on this dog's tag was obviously the owner, and I had seen a sign somewhere way, way down the road, the same name. So I headed for that particular ranch entrance, hoping that I wasn't going to get shot once I got on property. And I followed this little road, got to the top, and this gentleman in the coveralls comes out from his barn, and I said, excuse me, sir, is your last name so-and-so? Yes. I said, is this your dog? No. That's my cousin's. He's down the road. I said, how far down the road? Anyway, I used his phone, and I called the owner, whose wife answered the phone. She said, come on down. Here's the gate code. So I headed for their place. And here I come on a stranger's ranch with their dog sitting up on the console of my truck looking straight out ahead as if he's sailing through the ocean and he's the captain of his own world. And I pull up in front of their house, and she's out getting chicken eggs. I said, I have your dog. And she laughed, and she said, that's very, very strange because the rest of the hunting dogs and my husband and the hunters are way on the other side of the ranch. And I thought, well, how did Max get all the way over to where it was the highway? She says, I don't know. So the more we got to talking, the more she realized that I was somebody that she would probably invite to have the coffee, and she's just as worried about the state of affairs in this republic that I was going towards. She understood my thought processes, and so she was still a little bit wary, but she was open enough to invite me to come meet some other people, which I did. That I think it was 2 weeks or 3 weeks after that. And that is how I met everybody involved with and elected in the Republic of Texas. That was back in early 2010, I believe.
Wow, and it's all Max's fault.
It's all Max's fault. In fact, I visited Max 2 weeks ago, and he's got a few more cuts from hog tusks on his legs, and his eyes are a heck of a lot more droopy than they were before, and he's getting a little bit long in the tooth, but he recognized me, and he came over and just licked me upside one up and down the other, and there's something about that dog. He was on a mission that day, and otherwise wow. I never would have probably come across some of these people until maybe a much later date, or maybe not at all.
Right. That's a great story. I love that one. I've heard a lot of people, most people are introduced to the Republic of Texas, and the wonderful people that make up the Republic by humans, but hey, dogs are smart too. I know that.
Dogs are far smarter than most people I know. So, that's scary. But anyway.
Okay. Hey, Susie, what's the most important thing going on in the Republic of Texas right now today?
I think getting the word out. There's two. It's a combination of getting the word out both in print, in voice, in the media, and I think great strides were made these past few months along those lines. And it's generated a lot of interest with people, and the website that Tom O'Halloran put together, which is a top-notch website. He improves on it all the time. He's always got great ideas. And I think just making people aware of who they are and who they are in the big scheme of things as far as not the United States of America is concerned. They need to understand that there's the United States for America. This is vastly different, and that so many people have this the small, still voice in the back of their head that keeps gnawing at them, going, something doesn't feel right, but how come I can't figure out what it is? And I've had so many people express that same concern, that something's going on that's not quite right. It doesn't set really well, but they don't know how to address it, who to address it with. And I just think that reaching out to people is probably the most important thing, from my point of view, especially as a District 9 representative in Congress. The people is what it's all about. If people don't understand,
tell me more about
why.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Go ahead and finish your thought. I didn't mean to jump in there. I'll hold mine.
Okay. If the people don't understand what it is that others see in the future, the vision that's there, then it really doesn't make any difference. They continue with their lives, trying to do the best that they can for their wives or their husbands and their children, and trying to provide a future, and not understanding that, hey, we all started out on this hamster wheel at the behest and for the pleasure of the government that rules us. And there is a way out. There is a different way. It's far simpler. It's far grander, because that sounds like a juxtaposition, but it's really not. The goal, I think, should be to ever be improving the lives of everybody around you, but in that lies them understanding that with more liberty comes a lot more responsibility. And a lot of people in this day and age are not willing to take up that mantle of responsibility to move forward, because they just see it as being a lot of work.
For sure, and I understand that. And, I love everything that you say. I think communications is at the forefront of restoring the Republic. The international angle, that's one thing. But communications, that's vital, right? That's how,
that's where it's That's where it's at, communication. If you can't communicate, we fall into this deep pit of despair, and nobody knows what's going on.
My mom today, I was talking to her on the phone, and she goes to me and she says, well, what's going on? The world's all crazy, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, okay, Mom, what are you listening to? What are those issues? What did you hear this about? Because I listen to different media than she does. And I go,
yeah.
Well, I wouldn't listen to those guys. Well, that's scare, that's fear. You think of this angle. Well, who should I listen to? I'm like, Mom, just forget it. You don't know the internet. I can't teach you. You don't have it. You can't. And it's a shame. Most of the people have what? Direct TV, cable, radio, and they don't talk like this on the radio.
Right.
Yeah, I don't
know.
But we're doing it now, and as long as we get more and more people to talk, I can actually drag an awful lot of people onto this show and have them talk just like you, Susie. Just, well, not just like you. You guys are really unique.
Well, thank you. My dad wouldn't call me unique quite in that tone of voice, but I appreciate that very much, Steve.
You used a different tone. I hope it was an endearing tone that I used. So, because I do appreciate all the stuff that you do, Susie and Doc. I have lots of respect and appreciate you too. Do you have any questions, Doc? I seem to be like bulldozing over everything.
Oh, that's fine. You guys were doing a great interview. You didn't need me. Yeah.
We always need you, Doc.
Well, let's see if we can get him worked up enough sometime that he'll jump in there and raise his fangs. Grr.
Have we heard from Tom O'Halloran? He was supposed to call in today.
I haven't seen him on the board. We've got a listener on the Listen Live line, a few listeners that are all over the place. So he might just be listening, I think he's a little bit done with this and just wanting to watch how it plays out. It's not up to him to change the government. It's up to him to define to the government what he will do, right, and what he won't do. He did that. And, then it's up to the people to tell the government that they can't treat people like that. So I take that role in being the people and standing up for another person, right? You can use the word Texian. So especially since I have this nice little venue called the Republic of Texas Radio. It's great.
Amen.
We can explore it. I wanted to get this from you. District 9, Susie, big old district. Where does your district start and how far does it go as you overlay it on the corporate United States of America, if you were to plop your district down?
Well, it includes both the current district of Bexar County, or the current county of Bexar, which is San Antonio, and it runs all the way up to Oklahoma. It includes counties, which I don't have the list of all the counties in front of me right now, I'm sorry, Steve, but it includes counties in New Mexico. It includes counties in Colorado. It includes counties in Wyoming, Kansas, Oklahoma. So this is a vast, vast district. And I do know that quite a few people that I have heard from who do live in Wyoming, Colorado, and New Mexico were extremely elated to find out that they are actually living in the Republic of Texas. They feel like the mantle of safety had been sort of leveled upon their shoulders at that point, and they felt that they had a choice, a way out, a different venue in which to express their wishes, because I don't know, there's a lot of people out there that are beginning to feel like they're grasping at straws. So,
right.
That kind of feedback from people from far-flung counties in Wyoming, that was quite heartening.
Totally. And I have another question on that line, but the whole fact is you got the United States, the corporate United States of America isn't going to change stripes back to a republic, period, unless something happens. It doesn't intend to change. We're working forward. We have reconvened the Republic of Texas, and we have some longevity. We're on our 4th president, currently speaking. We have an angle. We're out there telling everybody they don't have to live like this. And when it comes time, now here's the question for you. And this is what I've been told. Maybe you can expand upon it, and maybe you've even put a little bit more thought. When we do achieve international recognition, there's no reason for us to just move on as this corporate state of Texas. We brought our marbles into the game, and when we leave the game, we're going to approach all those people in Montana and Colorado and whatnot and say, hey, this is your chance. You want to go, or do you want to stay? Is that how it goes, or what are your thoughts on that?
Well, that pretty much You just put it into a nutshell, actually, Steve. And people have an option. Right now, the people in the Republic that realize they're in the Republic have the open option of becoming a Texian, filling out the paperwork, and rejecting the corporate USA. They have the chance to be part of the re-cementing of history. They have options. And if they don't wish to do that now and fill out the paperwork of citizenship and become a Texian, then that's fine. There's no coercion. But the ones that fill out the paperwork and announce that they are Texians will have the right to vote in Texian elections and vote in the Republic, have their voices heard, and be a part of a real government that is powered by the people, not a corporate government where they let you believe that, yeah, you're a part of everything, but you're really not. I came across a government forum not too long ago that this is exactly how dead people vote. So whether you're actually alive and still breathing or you're 6 feet under, either way, your vote is taken and used however they want it to be. But in that context, should you choose to wait however long, our Secretary of State has very definite plans on when he's going to have the cutoff date where if you do not become a Texian and don't have your paperwork on file with the Secretary of State, then you're going to have to wait 10 years after becoming a Texian before you can vote.
Right.
And,
now, that's a good
that's
point. Well, okay, that's a good point, and I know I visited this subject previously. What right does he have to do that?
Well,
is that defined within the Constitution? Is there a bill? Is there an amendment that actually states that? Because we are
right
a republic.
now, yes.
Right. So we have to do things that are right, even though the whole intent of that is to, well, everybody's so used to living in a democracy that all of a sudden they're just going to re-imprison themselves right then, right?
Right. Exactly. I cannot point to a statute at this particular time in the law.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to put you on the spot. That's one of my questions that I'm asking, and I'll continue to ask an answer because I really want to do this by the book because nobody knows what the book is actually said. Hey, you want to bring some? Do you want me to tell you something that I just learned today?
What? I would love to hear it.
Well, okay. So the Republic of Texas, the Constitution, says in order for us to make an amendment to the Constitution, it has to come from the people. Okay. And, well, the Constitutional Revisionist Committee was actually proposed by Senator Bob Wilson in his capacity as a senator. I was at the thing and everybody voted on it, but that was improper procedure as defined by the Constitution because he wasn't acting as the capacity of an individual. The chair had acknowledged Senator Bob Wilson, and he says we need to do a complete rewrite of the Constitution. We don't want to do amendments and anything like that, and that's why if you visit thetexasrepublic.com, you'll see a little banner says join the Constitutional Revisionist Committee, and, well, seems like that was done inaccurately if he did it in his persona as an individual. Am I nitpicking? Because I do believe that the Constitution says what it says for a reason.
Right. You're not nitpicking at all, Steve. And yes, he did recognize that fact. I believe there were adjustments that were going to be made on the website to that effect because the people do have to move the body forward when it comes to changing the Constitution.
Okay.
And that power lies with the people.
Oh, I'm so glad that you're paying attention to that and that Bob Wilson's paying attention to that too. because I really don't like the idea of cracking open a constitution and just trying to make a whole bunch of changes. I want everybody's input on this, and I want, like Ray Cannon said, when this was being proposed, he says this has to be represented by all the people, and I'm like,
right,
yeah, we don't have that. The one point that was taken from that is it takes a long time to actually manipulate the conversation, not manipulate the conversation, to get the conversation in. If I want to add an amendment to the Constitution, first thing that needs to be done is a group of individuals have to come forward and petition Congress saying, we need to make amendments to the Constitution. Then they have to agree. Then it has to wait to the next year. The next year, they have to vote again if it's a good idea. And once 2 years in a row, 2 different Congresses, Congress is elected every year. Mm-hmm. If it passes that twice, then it goes out for an election to the general public. Is that your understanding as well, Doc, Susie?
Go ahead, Doc.
Well, the Senate or the House could propose a change to the amendment with an amendment, and then if it passes them, then it has to be presented to the public, and they have to vote on it. So anybody could bring forth to the House or the Senate a suggestion for an amendment they would like, and then they could discuss that. It has to be approved in the Senate and the House in joint session. And if it goes through that process, whether it originated from a senator or a representative or just a Texian, then the public votes on it, and they'd have to vote to put that amendment change.
I concur.
Okay. Cool. Hey, we got a caller. I'm unmuting his mic. Let's see what he's interested in talking about. Hey, you're on the air. What's your name?
This is Anti-Fed, Ed the Anti-Fed. Okay. Anyways, 2 things you're talking about there are 2 things I like to bring up for constitutional amendments that have been proposed over the last 5 or 10 years by a lot of organizations, political organizations, are A, the fair tax, get rid of the IRS, and B, term limits. These are 2 big issues that, you go to termlimits.com or fairtax.com. Both these organizations are powerful organizations of grassroots people that are trying to pass amendments, and they're doing it through, not so much through Article 5, which never happened, but through their representation through the Congress and the Senate.
Hey, Auntie. Yeah. Hey, Auntie. Hey, we're talking about a different constitution than the Constitution of the once existent Republic of the United States. We're talking the same thing, but we're talking about a constitution, the Texas Constitution that we operate under.
Okay, so you're talking about Texas, which falls still under the states' rights. So you can still do your Constitution under Article 10 of the Constitution, which is states' rights.
Well, then again, we're still not talking, apples and apples. Texas was a nation.
You can say, look, we're not going to follow the income tax. We're not going to follow all the federal laws that are bad. We're going to refuse to follow the federal laws. We're not actually succeeding, but we're going to refuse to follow the federal laws that are unconstitutional.
Yeah, no, we're not going to deal with America anymore. The corporate United States of America. Its time has come. It's become a totalitarian government. It's spreading its hate all throughout the globe. It's trying to merge with Canada and Texas. We're part of the Republic of Texas. You can get our site at thetexasrepublic.com. We're not secessionists. we believe that when our country joined the United States under duress, that's an interesting story, and we're going to have to talk about that sometime. But the United States incorporated or pulled in Texas. That was a country that had legal, trade deals with other countries. I mean, it was a country. Now, a few years ago in 2007, it reconvened, and we've been operating as the Republic of Texas. We're working forward today to get international recognition through we're arguing about that. But we're heading down an international vector to, talk about the crimes that the United States has committed against Texas and Texians, or Texans, however you want to talk about it. But constitutional stuff, it's pretty much the same, because the Republic of Texas Constitution was written by the guy that wrote the Constitution of the Republic of Mexico from the Republic of the United States, and nobody cares about those constitutions anymore. Don't you think that they don't care about the Constitution, Auntie? Are you still there? Did I bloviate too much?
Hello? Oh, no. Basically, it's like, I think that, you have the right to opt out of all the bad federal laws and remain within the United States. Also, you have the right to say, well, we're not going to even participate at all. I mean, I think that's right. I mean, I'm for decentralization of power, so that's basically what the Anti-Federalists were about. Were about the decentralization of power. They never wanted the Constitution to be ratified in the first place. The Anti-Federalists were the ones that, the two-party breakup, which, eventually led to Civil War. But before the Civil War, it's like they were saying, hey, we want decentralization of power. We want the decentralization of the power to be decentralized and alive with the states. So actually, when it was founded, it was the United States was a small U and a big S. The states had more power than the federal government, and that's what our founders intended, that the federal government be very limited in scope. And that's what we need really back in.
God, it's such a beautiful idea that a reality could actually work like that. I really want to exist like that. But I don't think that the United States is willing to, the corporate U.S., that is willing to go by anything US like that.
But people in other states and the people themselves do want to retain our rights and do want to limit, because our founding fathers founded it on the government governs the least, governs the best. So we wanted a limited amount of government, especially at the federal level. Of course, it was kind of a coup d'etat. I call it the creature from Philadelphia that marched out of the Philadelphia, convention, because in Annapolis the year before it failed. But basically what we're talking about here is a limited form of government. Even when George Washington, because Patrick Henry refused, the guy that said, give me liberty or give me death, he refused to go to the Constitutional Convention because he didn't, like the whole idea of it. He was big on states' rights, and he was the number primo guy in the state of Virginia, just like, whoever's leading your movement there wants to be the primo guy in Texas. So Washington, of course, went to the Philadelphia. He didn't go to the Annapolis Convention. That's why it failed. Washington was a great leader. He fought the greatest country, the strongest country in the world to get our freedom. But, he took Madison in, took him under his wing, and they wrote that Constitutional Convention. Or wrote the Constitution at the convention. And, it was him. He says, well, I'm going to go present this to Patrick Henry. And then he brought in Patrick, he said Patrick came up to Mount Vernon, and he says, here it is, man. Here's the Constitution we read. And he just looked at it. And he was very respectable. He was very respectful of Washington. And then, but what he said after he saw it, it just broke his heart. And he went on to say, to try to stop this Constitution from passing, because he wanted states' rights to be supreme, like what you want right now. He said, I see a day when this federal government grows so big, it'll come into your houses and measure everything you eat, drink, and wear. And, Patrick Henry had great vision at that time. You know, he not only predicted the revolution, he also predicted the federal government would be out of control today, and that people like you and me would be talking about states' rights.
Right,
Yep.
and getting back to what's important. Man, I know. I just think that it feels like we're talking about fairy tales. When I was a kid, they told me we lived in a republic, and what do we got? No, ain't nothing like that. It's scary.
No,
we
got Marxism. We got a lot of Marxism.
I really don't think you can see. I can see your point that we can actually change the United States or any state. I think that they make up their reasons and excuses, and they will push you, and they will probe you, and you can sit there. I don't deal with federal laws, but then they'll give sheriffs guns. They'll give sheriffs thousands and millions of dollars. They'll give, police officers millions of dollars, and they're going to obey the feds. Then the feds will sit there and they'll say, well, you work for us, and they say, sure, give me some more money. Right? Give me some bulletproof vests. All of a sudden, they'll usurp the power from the states that are pushing these state right bills. And I've seen those state right bills. And the vector that you talk about doing, a states' rights thing, it just doesn't work when you've got the Federalists that are out there. What are they doing? They're giving money to everybody. They print the damn money, right? The only hope.
Right. That's another reason that we need to go around and start bartering and start trading amongst ourselves and start getting off the addiction of the Federal Reserve note. The biggest problem we have and the biggest enemy we have is people are addicted to the Federal Reserve note. You can get junkies are addicted to heroin. The human condition in the United States and throughout the world, they got the Federal Reserve note or an international IMF thing stuck up in their vein, and to them, that's the most important thing in the world. That's
last
liberty.
week. Hey, Social Security's a problem too. A lot of people are addicted to Social Security and welfare, and Social Security came out and said that they won't be able to pay Social Security.
No, that's all part of the Federal Reserve dictators. They all have that needle. They want that pump. They want it pumped up. Oh, you're going to pump it up more? You're going to give me that morphine more? Then I'm going to take that. You're going to give me more Federal Reserve notes? I don't care about my liberty. I just want my Obama phone, and I want as much as you can give me. Forget liberty. And then that's where our problem is.
Hey, you know what? I applaud you, totally for everything. I barter. Right? I have a garden.
Yeah.
I try to change the world. I try to tell people. I talk to people about stuff like that. I focus on Texas because I see that Texas is one of those states that we can turn, and we can tell them they don't have to live like this, right?
Right.
And that will be one of the best things to happen to the United States of America if Texas were to leave and become a republic again. Everybody would go, whoa, what's going on? That would help them.
Yeah.
That would
what? I appreciate your dream. I applaud your dream. I mean, the Confederate States tried the same dream. There's actually, I'm sure you're aware of it, the Free State Movement up in New Hampshire. I've had some friends.
Of course.
I'm actually from Florida, but I've had friends leave Florida and move up to New Hampshire to try to influence the Free State Movement up there. I mean,
right.
It's all comes down to it. We're all. What we really need, like our founding father says, an educated populace is cornerstone liberty. If we want liberty, we have to have an educated populace that puts liberty first and materialism second. Basically, today the Federal Reserve note and centralization of banking and centralization of government, is definitely not what our founders had. Most of the founders, 95% of them, had in mind. There's a few wanted, like Hamilton, and still wanted the monocrats, and they still wanted a centralized banking system.
Hey, Auntie, let me give you a few closing remarks. I need to chew up a little bit of time with Susie. I don't get to talk to her too often. Close us out. Give me a few things that are important to you today.
Well, what's important... Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Doc? Okay. Auntie, you're on, man.
Okay. Well, what's important to me today, we have a guy in Florida that's running for Rubio's spot, because Rubio has announced he's running for Obama's spot. And and he's libertarian. He's a good guy. Go to AugustusInvictusForSenate.com or InvictusForSenate.com. Check out his website. And another thing is to strengthen the Second Amendment for all the people in America, everybody across the land. Go to SuperBrochure.com. It's out of Tampa, but we're spreading these brochures across. It's the greatest Second Amendment brochure out there. It's called SuperBrochure.com. So InvictusForSenate.com, he's going to replace Rubio, hopefully, and SuperBrochure.com. These are two of the activist things that I'm currently doing. And another thing I'm working on is trying to get an app produced that would be basically, I'm going to hear called the Snowden app or Use for Freedom app. And it's basically, you can do it in your state, get an app producer, and I have Invictus, a lawyer, and a couple other lawyer friends of mine. We're going to be the anti-NSA app. We're going to be the people's app to spy on the government. And you can also hit it to bring a lawyer up and put him on the Skype to talk to the police officer he pulls you over. And it's just going to be a protective app.
Hey,
and we need to get this.
I love that idea.
And the money come back to the people to use for libertarian or liberty education.
Hey, man, I love your points. You have great ideas, and I really appreciate you. I'm going to go ahead and throw you back onto the listen line and see what Susie's got going. Thank you. Bye. Hey, Susie, what was your take on that?
I fully appreciate where he's coming from. That's where I used to be years ago before I started doing so much research and digging and trying to get behind that green curtain. The IMF, the FRNs, all these things come into play. What the Founding Fathers wanted, what their vision was, I mean, they fought and argued just as much as, any close family does when they're trying to do the best thing that they deem fit for generations to come. There are so many different facets and ramifications that are woven throughout everything that Auntie was alluding to. When we look at the big picture, and we have to, before we get into the minutia, because the big picture is that the powers that be have nothing to do with anybody living in the United States. Almost all governments are puppet governments, and the people that pull those strings, we have no clue or very few clues as to who they really, really are. It doesn't have anything to do with anybody whose name appears in the paper, because these guys are way behind all kinds of smoke and mirrors. But yes, unfortunately, the rights as we've defined what your rights would be in Texas, in the Republic, are vastly different from what other people in their different groups are planning. And I applaud everybody who's thinking outside the box. Do not get me wrong. But as far as taxes in the Republic of Texas, that's a whole. It would be vastly different from what people are used to thinking of as far as what's going to be needed. In Texas, the reason that the President of the United States really pushed annexation of Texas the way they did, prior to finding out what all was over in California and Nevada and Utah and other states, current states that were owned or were property of Mexico, when they figured out there's a whole lot of booty out there as far as, gold, minerals, all these other things, that all of a sudden their ears perked up and their gritty little fingers started to get itchy. And they thought, our way to the Pacific is through Texas. So now we are interested in Texas, and we've got to cause all kinds of unrest down there between Texas and Mexico, and we've got to do things a particular way so that we can get our claws into that. It's all about greed, power, and money, no matter what you're talking about. Follow the yellow brick road. If you follow the money, you're going to get to the root of the problem. The IMF, it's a greedy Medusa of a snake. I mean, it's a demon that's out there. It's got its claws into almost every sovereign nation in the world. And I know some Iranians, I know some Syrians, I know some Paraguayans, and they're all, look, we're trying to quell the civil unrest. We know what's going on. We know that there are different factions that are being sent in by third parties to create unrest, to alert the world to something that is, it's a red flag event. false flag events. This is not what is really happening because it is buried so darn deep. But the end result is that the powers that be want the IMF in there so that they can get their claws into a sovereign nation's economy and suck it dry, input their own ideas, make them subservient to what the IMF wants. Because what the IMF wants, the IMF always usually gets, no matter how long it takes. I applaud sovereign nations who are holding on to their sovereignty with everything that they have, because they understand the ramifications of global government, of global dominance.
Hold there. Sovereign nation. Tell me one.
Iran, Syria.
Okay. Oh, well,
that's why there's so much unrest over there.
Well, they're kind of aren't we screwing with Syria? Well, I guess we're screwing with Iran too. Okay, so you're defining sovereign nation as one that's not connected to the IMF. Like Egypt used to be a sovereign, sort of. It had its own banking system, and then it got its free upgrade to, the IMF as soon as they overthrew the regime, right?
Well, what happens is the forces, once you have civil unrest, you have war, you have destruction, you have no infrastructure anymore, and the IMF goes in and says, you know what, we're going to lend you the money, and the United States, which is in there somewhere usually in the mix, they'll come in with their engineers and our architects, and they're going to help you rebuild, and then you owe the IMF for the rest of eternity unless you can get them out of there, and that is like trying to eradicate a very, very deep-seated boil. And
Great.
It's almost an impossibility. So you don't want to go there, and that's why, as much as vitriolic as we are told by the mainstream media that these countries they're in our faces, they're inciting riots, they're doing this. Well, are they really? Do we know how to get behind that curtain and get the true facts? Do we know the methods of digging, try to find that out? And do we have the time when we're trying to put food on the table for our kids? How are we supposed to, in our very, calm home positions, how are we to do this and get involved in other countries' problems unless we're looking for clues that will keep us alert to the fact that these same things have been going on in our country for years. They've been whitewashed. They have been buried. We have been lied to. Our public school system does nothing more than dumb down our children. I know that the percentages of families yanking their children out of public schools, trying to put them in private schools if they can, and homeschooling them have skyrocketed over the last few years. And there's a reason for this. People know that something's wrong. When you have your school system that is all of a sudden in some courses being turned upside down, and they're teaching your children stuff that you don't understand, so you can't do your homework with your children, that is another wedge in between the family bubble that forces your children to have more contact with the teachers than with your own family. Because if you can't sit down with your son and do the homework, the math homework, because it's not only fuzzy math, it is upside down, way out there in the stratosphere math. It continues to tear apart the family values that this country was founded on, eons ago.
Right.
And the family is everything. Where do you learn all of your basic foundational information? With your family, stories handed down generation to generation. But this is what happens. So when you're talking outside the box about, the United States or some other big country is going to go in and they're going to foment unrest in a sovereign nation, and you think about, wow, how does this affect me? Even if you understand the concept or even if you don't, hopefully there's something in the back of your mind that tells you this is fundamentally wrong. We should not be the world's watchdog. And if we are, and we're seen by that, why is that? Why are we allowed to do that or being pushed into those positions? It's a huge puzzle. It's an enormous puzzle. And the pieces are starting to fall more and more rapidly into place because we're moving at a very fast pace, because the powers that be understand that with the fomentation of the Internet and the fact that communication is fast and it's furious now. there's as much misinformation out there as there is information, but the people are waking up, and the beast is moving, and the powers that be are scared to some extent that, we need to move faster. We got to get this thing down the road because our window is closing. And in that same vein, the Republic of Texas window is closing in our goal to be able to get the people to a point where they understand that we still have the opportunity to reignite the dream that once was for our forefathers in the Republic of Texas.
Right, and I'm going to go with you on that one. I think our time is short as far as our window, right, as they tighten the grip. They come around. The Trans-Pacific Partnership is a good example of how we're going to be led down another path. They're doing all sorts of crazy stuff, so we have to move quick. We had President Jarnacki on last week, and I asked him to go out on a limb, and I said, when are we going to actually do something? When are we going to court, to the international court? When are we going to start this thing? And he told me about 2.5 months. Care to wager anything on a time frame that we have to get anywhere? What are your thoughts?
I'd like for Doc to weigh in on this. I'd like to get his input on what his perception of this is.
Hello, Doc. Are you there, Dave?
I'm here.
Yeah, he's not listening to us, Susie.
Okay, well, if I were a betting woman, I would say that I appreciate that President Jarnacki is looking months down the road and seeing this thing gel. I think with a wing, a whole lot of prayer, and a lot of energy and impetus, it might be doable. I'm going to go out on my own limb and say that I'm not going to hold my breath, but I'm praying as hard as I can that actually starts to come out of the fog and look like a doable entity.
Any thoughts there, Doc?
Wow. Susie, every time you're anywhere, Susie, it's amazing.
What, Doc?
I said every time you're on as an interview, you are amazing. You have a wealth of information. I assume our friend who came in was from Florida, and he had a lot of great ideas too that went with what Susie's talking about. But I don't know if he understood, if he's still on there, that we agree. We want to get away from the IRS, and we want to get away from a lot of federal government stuff, but we also want to pull away from the state of Texas and restore the nation of the Republic of Texas. And if we do all that, then all these things that he mentioned automatically go away.
Exactly.
Right. That's good. Hey, Susie, next time we get you on the air, let's try to do it over at the studio. Unfortunately, I've been having some problems at the studio that just didn't work out, and that's why we've got you on your phone out in the middle of nowhere talking.
Well, I hope I didn't fade out too much, Steve, but I really appreciate your having me on your show. And we will shoot for bigger and bigger things. Well, that's good. That's good. Nobody stepped all over me this time. This is good.
That's sweet. Hey, thank you for joining us, Susie. We'll be talking to you soon, and if not, seeing you in person.
Sounds great, Mr. O'Brien. You have an awesome week and a wonderful Memorial Day.
Thank you, Susie.
Thank you, Doc. I'll be talking to you soon, too.
That's good. Wow. Well, that was a fun run there, Doc.
What's that?
That was a fun run. We had a couple nice conversations, and, is there anything left that we need to talk about? Do you have any avenues that we need to go down?
Well, I wish that caller would look into our Republic of Texas, because we need people like that. And I don't think he's ever going to get it in the United States and sticking with Florida, which I think is where it's from. he's knowledgeable and he's passionate, and we would love to have him with us.
Yeah, totally. It sounds like he's well learned, and he likes the idea of a constitutional government. You know, he mentioned the Free State Project. You ever hear about that?
The what?
The Free State Project.
Oh, yeah. Well, he mentioned getting rid of the IRS and a lot of good things. But I'm not sure he fully understood that we're trying to reestablish the nation of the Republic of Texas. And all those things that he wanted, we will immediately have when Texas is recognized as an independent nation again.
Right, and I totally agree with you on that. I think he got it towards the end, and you know, I'm not sure if he is still listening on there, but we do need more people, and it is a neat thing. If you're sitting there outside the United States, when you see the waves starting to come from all the stuff that we're doing, and you hear that Texas is Texas going to be free? You may want to move to Texas, because we're going to try to establish freedom again, and things could get really bad in the next coming few years in the corporate U.S. They have intentions of, getting really bad. You know, I've read the manual on what the United Nations is planning for Texas. It's called Agenda 21, and I know they didn't meet their goal, but they pushed that goal out to 2050 or something like that. It was 2054. Anyways, it doesn't look like a pretty world. Our world does. Hey, why don't you close us out? Tell everybody who we are, what we stand for. Tell them what you think's important, Doc. And we've got 3 minutes left on the show.
Well, everybody, please come join us at the Republic of Texas webpage. It's thetexasrepublic.com. And we are trying to reestablish the great nation of the Republic of Texas and get away from not only the United States, but Texas state, where people are free and you can make your own decisions, raise your kids the way you want, and practice your religion the way you would like. So please come join us, check out our webpage, and please listen to our radio show. We're here every Sunday at 7 o'clock.
That's great. I'd like to add one thing, everybody. Oh, well, I guess maybe it's two. I'm Steve OBrien, and that's Doc. How do you pronounce your last name? Krupa?
Krupa, sir.
And I, for one, love you all. Peace, and take care.